Hello, the rare gems. The only thing more dangerous than a rebel is someone who doesn't need a revolution to be free. If you're a Sigma female, you've probably spent most of your life being misunderstood. You're not rebellious, but you refuse to conform. You don't seek attention, yet people watch you. You don't challenge authority outright, but you quietly break every invisible rule that was meant to keep you in line. And for that, society labels you a villain. Not because you're cruel, not because you cause harm, but because you refuse to be controlled. The world operates on a system, one that expects women to be predictable, either playing by the rules or fighting against them in ways that can still be dismissed. You do neither. You don't beg for approval, you don't rely on external validation. You don't fit into the easy categories of obedient or troublemaker. Instead, you move through life on your own terms, making the entire system nervous, and that's exactly why you're necessary. You expose the cracks in a world that runs on fear, manipulation, and expectations that don't serve you. You prove that happiness doesn't come from playing a part. It comes from being unapologetically yourself. And by existing, you challenge others to ask themselves why they feel so threatened by a woman who simply refuses to be owned. If this resonates with you, you're not alone. Watch the full video to understand why being the villain to the status quo is the greatest power you never asked for, but were born to wield. Let's get started, the rare gems. Number 1. She destroys the pick-me versus rebel binary. Society loves an easy label. Either you're a pick-me, a woman who bends over backward to please, always seeking approval, always putting others first, or you're a rebel, loud, defiant, aggressively challenging every rule just to prove a point. These two roles are easy to understand, easy to categorize, and most importantly, easy to control. But a Sigma female, she fits into neither. And that's exactly why she makes people uncomfortable. She doesn't live her life to be chosen. She has no interest in twisting herself into the perfect woman just to earn favor, whether from men, society, or even other women. She doesn't play weak to get sympathy, nor does she dim her intelligence to be more likable. She won't go along just to keep the peace, but she also won't waste her breath arguing with fools. At the same time, she isn't some loud, aggressive rule breaker who fights for attention. She doesn't rebel just for the sake of rebelling. She won't scream about how independent she is or demand the world recognize her strength. Why? Because she doesn't need to. She simply is, and that quiet confidence shakes people to their core. Most people rely on a system where women fall neatly into one of these two categories. When they meet a Sigma female, they don't know what to do with her. If she's not seeking approval but also isn't openly fighting, then what is she? That question alone makes her dangerous. She forces people to see that a woman doesn't need to be in a battle to be powerful. She doesn't need to submit or scream to make an impact. She just moves through life on her own terms, proving that real strength isn't about labels, it's about not needing one at all. And that's exactly why society sees her as a threat. Number 2, she redefines what power looks like. Society has a narrow definition of power, especially for women. If you're not loud, assertive, or politically charged, you must be weak. If you're not constantly fighting to prove yourself, you must not be strong. The world expects power to be something obvious, something that can be measured in volume, status, or aggression. And then there's the Sigma female. She doesn't fit the mold, and that's what makes her dangerous. Her power isn't loud, but it's undeniable. She doesn't need to scream to be heard, nor does she waste time trying to convince people of her worth. She simply carries herself in a way that makes others take notice, without her even trying. It's in the way she walks into a room with quiet confidence, the way she handles conflict without theatrics, the way she makes decisions without asking for permission. Most people draw their power from external validation, titles, attention, social approval. But a Sigma female? She doesn't need any of that. She could disappear from the public eye tomorrow, and her sense of self wouldn't waver. That's what unsettles people the most. She doesn't need to control others, and she doesn't need others to control her. She doesn't seek power over people. She seeks power over herself, her emotions, her decisions, her life. And that level of self-mastery is something most people will never achieve. The world isn't used to women like this. A woman who doesn't need constant affirmation, a woman whose presence is enough to command respect. That's a direct challenge to a society built on keeping women either seeking approval or loudly fighting against the system. A Sigma female does neither. She just exists, and in doing so, she redefines what real power looks like. And nothing is more threatening than a woman who cannot be controlled by rules, expectations, or even fear itself. Number 3. She disrupts the struggle Olympics. Modern culture is obsessed with who has it the hardest. Everywhere you look, people are competing in the struggle Olympics, trying to outdo each other in suffering. They trade their hardships like currency, hoping for sympathy, attention, or power. But the Sigma female, she refuses to play. She doesn't use victimhood to get ahead. She doesn't share her struggles for validation. She doesn't waste time proving that her pain is worse than someone else's. And that infuriates people who rely on hardship as a social weapon. Why? Because the struggle game only works if everyone agrees to play. If someone opts out, if someone stands tall and refuses to beg for pity, it exposes the entire game for what it is, a trap. See, most people don't realize that constantly proving how hard their life is doesn't empower them. It chains them to their own suffering. They become defined by their struggles rather than their strengths. They think that if they stop complaining, the world will stop caring. And in many ways, they're right. But a Sigma female doesn't need the world's sympathy. She doesn't tie her identity to what she's been through. She believes that what happens to her doesn't define her. How she responds does. And that response is always the same: adapt, move forward, and don't look back. This mindset makes people uncomfortable because it strips them of an easy way to gain power. If they can't guilt her, if they can't manipulate her through shared suffering, then how do they control her? They don't. And that's the real reason society sees her as a threat. She doesn't just refuse to play the game, she exposes that the game was never worth playing in the first place. Number 4. She's not interested in playing feminine chess. In many social circles, women engage in an unspoken game, a strategic dance of power plays, passive-aggressive digs, and silent ranking systems. Compliments that are actually insults, friendships that are actually competitions, smiles that hide daggers. A Sigma female? She refuses to play. She doesn't waste energy decoding hidden meanings or crafting subtle jabs. She doesn't play the game of who's the most desirable, who's the most liked, who has the most influence. She doesn't seek approval from the self-proclaimed queen bee, nor does she feel the need to prove her worth through gossip, status, or social alliances. And that refusal to engage, it drives people insane. See, most women expect a response. They expect a counter move. When they throw a disguised insult, they expect a fake smile or a sharper jab in return. But when a Sigma female simply doesn't react, it leaves them confused. Did she not catch the insult? Does she not care? Why isn't she playing along? It's because she sees the game for what it is, a waste of time. She won't lower herself to petty feuds, social hierarchies, or fake friendships. If she doesn't like someone, she simply doesn't engage. No drama, no theatrics, just distance. And that makes her dangerous. She's unpredictable because she's not fueled by the need for validation. She doesn't need to be the most liked, the most feared, or the most admired. She just needs to be free. That kind of detachment unnerves people who thrive on control. When you can't manipulate someone with approval, exclusion, or emotional baiting, you lose all leverage over them. That's why a Sigma female stands apart. She isn't playing feminine chess. She's walking away from the board entirely. At number 5, she's walking proof that women can be whole on their own. The world is built on one dangerous lie, that a woman is never enough by herself. From the moment she's born, society feeds her the same script. She needs a man to complete her, a title to define her, and approval to validate her. A woman who isn't chasing one of these things, she must be lost, broken, or in denial. But then there's the Sigma female. She doesn't just reject this lie, she destroys it, not with words, not with arguments, but simply by existing. She doesn't look for someone to fix her because she was never broken. She doesn't attach her value to a relationship, a job, or the opinions of others. She stands on her own, confident, content, and whole, and that terrifies people. Why? Because the entire system profits off female insecurity. Industries thrive on making women believe they're lacking. Beauty companies sell her the idea that she isn't enough as she is. Relationship gurus tell her she must change to be chosen. Social media drowns her in comparison, convincing her that happiness is always just one more achievement, one more validation away. But a Sigma female sees through the illusion. She doesn't chase completeness, she already has it. And that makes her a threat. If more women stopped seeking external validation, entire industries would crumble. If women realized they could be whole without a relationship, the dating market would shift overnight. If they stopped tying their worth to their looks, their status, or their ability to be liked, the power dynamics would flip. That's why the world tries to label Sigma females as cold, too independent, or intimidating. It's easier to shame them than to admit the truth. They've escaped the trap. She doesn't need permission to be happy, she already is. Number 6. She doesn't accept the preset life path. Society hands out a script at birth: go to school, get a stable job, get married, have kids, follow the path, check the boxes, and you'll be rewarded with approval, security, and a sense of belonging. Most people don't question it. They accept the script because it's familiar, because it's expected, because it's easier than facing the unknown. But the Sigma female? She questions everything, not because she rejects love, stability, or family, but because she refuses to follow a path just because someone else said she should. She needs a reason beyond, that's just how it's done. That's what makes traditionalists nervous. She's proof that fulfillment isn't tied to a checklist, that you don't have to force yourself into a life that doesn't fit, that there's more than one way to define success. And when people see her thriving outside the system, it unsettles them. Because if she's right, then what does that mean for them? Were they blindly following rules they never had to? Were they settling for a version of happiness that was never really theirs? Rather than confront these uncomfortable questions, they label her the villain. She's lost. She's wasting time. She's going to regret it. But here's the truth. She's free. She's not rushing to meet society's deadlines. She's not forcing herself into roles she doesn't want. She's living life on her own terms, and whether she chooses marriage or solitude, a corporate career or a life off the grid, one thing is certain: it will be her choice. And that kind of autonomy, it terrifies those who never dared to choose for themselves. Number 7. They are the villain only to those who fear the truth. Sigma females don't try to be villains. They don't wake up thinking about how to disrupt the system or make people uncomfortable. They simply exist. But that existence alone shakes the foundation of those who rely on illusions. See, the world is built on a delicate balance of unspoken lies. Lies about power, lies about relationships, lies about success. Most people don't question them because questioning would force them to confront uncomfortable truths. And if there's one thing people hate more than being wrong, it's admitting it. Enter the Sigma female. She doesn't scream, she doesn't argue. She just lives differently, and that's enough to make certain people panic. She refuses to conform, exposing the fact that obedience was always a choice. She doesn't seek validation, proving that self-worth isn't external. She walks away without fear, showing that no one is truly trapped, only conditioned. And for those who built their lives around these illusions, that's terrifying. They can't handle the truth, so they do the next best thing. They demonize her. They call her cold, heartless, arrogant, anything to justify their own discomfort. Because if she's the problem, they don't have to face the real issue, themselves. But here's the thing, Sigma females don't need to be understood. They don't need permission to be who they are, because in the end, truth doesn't need approval, it just needs to be lived. At number 8, they can't be bought, bribed, or blackmailed. Powerful people don't fear opposition, they fear those they can't control. And a Sigma female, she's uncontrollable. Most people have a price, give them status, money, validation, something they crave, and you can predict their next move. But a Sigma female is different. She isn't chasing fame, she isn't impressed by titles, and she certainly doesn't live for other people's approval. That makes her a serious problem for those who thrive on manipulation. You can't buy her silence. You can't tempt her with fake promises. And if you try to use guilt, shame, or social pressure against her, She'll walk away without hesitation. This is what makes her dangerous to the status quo. A woman who isn't desperate to belong. A woman who doesn't need permission to be who she is. She's unpredictable, and unpredictability terrifies those who like their power neat and orderly. This is why the world tries so hard to villainize her. They call her difficult, cold, or uncooperative. Not because she's wrong, but because she refuses to be played. The truth is, people fear what they can't influence. And a woman who can't be influenced is the hardest thing to control. So let them be frustrated. Let them call her names. She doesn't need their approval. She only needs her freedom. And that's worth more than anything they could ever offer. Number 9, she wins the game by refusing to play. Most people spend their entire lives locked in a game they never questioned. A game of status, validation, approval. A game where you're expected to prove your worth through relationships, achievements, or social acceptance. The Sigma female? She refuses to play. She doesn't beg for respect. She doesn't chase attention. She doesn't waste energy fighting battles that don't serve her. And that is exactly what makes her dangerous to the status quo. See, traditional power structures only work if people stay invested in them. If women feel the need to be chosen, they'll compete for male attention. If they believe their worth comes from approval, they'll bend to society's rules. If they fear rejection, they'll conform. But a Sigma female opts out. She doesn't need permission to exist. She doesn't measure her value by external standards. She is self-sustaining. And nothing is more terrifying than a person who can't be controlled, not by expectations, not by criticism, and certainly not by fear. This is why she's often misunderstood. People assume she's detached, arrogant, or not playing fair. But the truth is simpler. She just doesn't need what they need. She doesn't need to be liked to feel secure. She doesn't need validation to know she's enough. She doesn't need to win because she already has everything she needs within herself. And that shakes the entire system. Because when one woman stops playing, others start questioning the game too. And if enough women realize they don't need to compete for what they already have, the whole illusion collapses. That's why the world sees her as a villain. Not because she's against them, but because she doesn't need them. At number 10, she creates fear in people who depend on herd mentality. Most people don't realize how much of their confidence isn't really theirs. It comes from the group they belong to, their friends, their community, their social circle. Take that away, and suddenly, they're unsure of who they are. Sigma females don't need the herd. They move through life as a self-sufficient unit, drawing strength from within rather than relying on external approval. They don't need a group to validate their opinions, and they don't seek comfort in numbers. And that makes some people deeply uncomfortable. Because if she can stand alone, why can't they? If she can trust her own judgment without needing constant reassurance, what's stopping them? Rather than face these unsettling questions, they label her the enemy. She's arrogant. She thinks she's better than everyone. She's antisocial. But the truth is far simpler. She just doesn't need the crutch they do. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable for them. Her presence exposes how fragile their confidence really is. People who rely on herd mentality need numbers to feel strong. Their opinions feel valid because others agree with them. Their choices feel right because the group approves. Take away the crowd, and their identity starts to crack. Sigma females, on the other hand, they don't need backup. She can be the only one in the room who sees things differently, and she won't flinch. She can stand against the current and not feel threatened by it. She doesn't seek isolation. She's just not afraid of it. And that is terrifying for those who have never had to think for themselves. Number 11, she doesn't try to save people who enjoy their chains. Most people assume that if you see someone trapped, you should help them escape. It sounds noble. It sounds kind. But the truth? Not everyone wants to be free. Some people love their chains. They find comfort in predictability, even if it means sacrificing independence. They like being told what to do because thinking for themselves is exhausting. They prefer security over possibility, even if it means staying small. Sigma females recognize this, and unlike activists, fixers, or saviors, she doesn't waste her time trying to wake up those who don't want to be woken. This is where she's misunderstood. Society expects women to be nurturers, emotional caretakers, and tireless supporters. When a Sigma female refuses to carry someone's burdens or fix their self-imposed limitations, she's called heartless, cold, or even selfish. But here's what they don't understand. She doesn't confuse emotional labor with love. She believes in personal responsibility. If someone wants to break free, she'll support them, but only if they do the work. She won't waste her energy on people who are comfortable in their cages while complaining about the bars. This attitude makes traditionalists uncomfortable because it flips the script. It challenges the idea that women should always be rescuers, healers, and martyrs. It forces people to take accountability for their own choices instead of expecting others to carry them. And here's the kicker. Deep down, most people don't want to be saved. They want sympathy for their struggles, not solutions. They want to vent, not change. The Sigma female sees through this, and she refuses to play along. She'll help those who genuinely want to grow. But she won't beg people to choose freedom. And that kind of detachment? It terrifies those who believe suffering is a badge of honor. In conclusion, the necessary villain that changes everything. Society doesn't fear chaos, it fears what it can't control. And the Sigma female? She is uncontrollable. She doesn't obey blindly, but she also doesn't rebel for the sake of rebellion. She doesn't play into power games, seek validation, or allow herself to be guilt-tripped into submission. She simply exists on her own terms. And that alone is enough to make her the villain in a world that thrives on conformity. But here's the truth. The world needs villains like her. Not the destructive kind, but the kind that forces people to wake up. The kind that makes people question why they follow rules that don't serve them, why they seek approval from people they don't respect, and why they're afraid of standing alone. She is a reminder that you don't have to live life on autopilot, that you don't have to be what others expect you to be, that true power doesn't come from dominance or rebellion, it comes from self-ownership. And if that makes her the villain, so be it. Because while others are waiting for permission to be themselves, she's already living freely. And in the end, that's not villainy, that's liberation. Thanks for watching The Rare Gems. See you in our next video. Bye for now, and God bless.